So this is a follow-up video about hypnosis. It's one of the most political things I have talked about in a long time. This is about political hypnosis from the media. See this hat? It got to be in this condition from years of working in the hot sun on a farm in northern Queensland. It was tough, but I lived through it. I'll get back to that. I had a heated conversation with one of my best friends a few days ago about the Derek Chauvin case, and it eventually led back to Trump. For never Trumpers, non-Trumpers, it pretty much always goes back to Trump. It's funny how when you ask a never Trumper about what he did that was so bad, and they say, I could go on for hours, but then ask them for just the top 5 things, or just the top 1 thing, they can't come up with anything specific. It always seems to come down to, he divided the country, which is absolutely 100% false. How could he divide the country if half the country voted for him? The country was already divided, or he wouldn't have gotten elected. And the verdict in the George Floyd case is exactly the same proof of the division, and more importantly, the cause of the division. Before I get into that, think about this when someone says they thought that Trump was a bad president. This friend of mine, where he works, 90% of his coworkers are immigrants, many black. He says the systemic racism is certainly not very visible in his world. So I ask him, how many people out of 100 random people on the street would not want to decrease taxes? How many would not want to put America first? How many would want to stop free health care to illegal aliens? How many would want to stop illegal immigration so tens of thousands of people that are waiting in line to come legally can get in faster? How many would want to stop creating conflict with non-congressionally approved military action in foreign lands? That is absolutely a waste. How many would not want to reduce government waste? How many would not want to attract manufacturing back to the USA? Of course, at least I can bet at least 80% of people would want all of that. And that's what Trump was doing. That was his platform. That's what he ran on, and that's what he did when he was in office. But he sends mean tweets. So in this conversation about the Chauvin case, the main kicker with me was when a friend of mine said, oh, and there's a rescue helicopter in the background. Unfortunately, a rescue helicopter, and they're looking for somebody back there. I don't know what's happening. Yeah, the kicker for me was when he said, you don't understand our justice system here. He was convicted by a jury. He's guilty. Sorry, but that's plain wrong. That is the attitude that was behind lynchings. And many people don't realize that there were many, many more white people lynched than black people. 12 opinions don't make a reality. Let me explain the way the justice system is supposed to work, and then what actually happened. First, some facts. A person is considered innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, a juror, and especially an entire jury, should not convict a man if there is reasonable doubt. Nowhere was evidence presented that Chauvin was racist or that had any motivation to hurt Floyd. And there's zero evidence that Chauvin caused his death. Zero. There was only expert opinion that it contributed to his death. And the expert opinion that was completely conflicted by another expert opinion. And for 2 expert witnesses to completely disagree on the cause of Floyd's death, that in itself is enough to create reasonable doubt. Together with the video and audio of Floyd, when he started saying he can't breathe, that was like into about 15 minutes before he was on the ground. And the statements and the evidence, the coroner's report, any juror that said beyond all reasonable doubt Chauvin had intent to kill, or much less actually was the cause of Floyd's death, is either completely hypnotized by what they've seen in the media, which is probably quite a few of them, or they're completely lying, which I'm sure a few of them are. They were hypnotized by hundreds and hundreds of videos played on the TV and in the courtroom. Hundreds and hundreds of videos that did not include the prelude to him being on the ground. As a matter of fact, that was suppressed. Now, why would the jurors lie? Well, the same reason that everyone was preparing for rioting if he was acquitted. They were afraid of the mob. And as is evidenced by the lack of crackdown on rioters and looters in Minneapolis, they should be afraid, deathly afraid. They lied to save their lives and their property from inevitable attack from the leftist mob. There's more video evidence in this case than virtually any other high-profile case in history. There's more eyewitnesses to this case than any in the world. The problem is that eyewitness accounts are notoriously wrong. There's lots and lots of research done on it. And considering that the original body cam footage was suppressed, hidden, and 98% of the world never saw it, brings doubt to the impartiality of the other footage, doesn't it? In the body cam footage, Floyd said he can't breathe at least 9 times before he was pinned on the ground. One of the officers asked him, when they were trying to put him in the car, why he couldn't stand up. His girlfriend testified that he'd fallen asleep in the car before the officers got there. The county medical examiner, the only one that inspected the body, his autopsy of Floyd, quote, revealed no physical findings that support a diagnosis of traumatic asphyxia or strangulation. The autopsy report said he had 3 times the fatal dosage of fentanyl in his system. Now, the prosecution argued that he had a tolerance to it. Well, maybe he did, but 3 times the legal fatal dosage of fentanyl should be reasonable doubt that Chauvin caused his death. And even the prosecution expert witness Tobin said it was that Floyd's system was 98% saturated with oxygen when they measured it at the county medical center at 9:16 p.m. That's what he told the court. Now, you cannot. That's a normal oxygen level in a person's lung. It's like the likelihood of him dying of asphyxiation is practically none. Your oxygen level has to be below 60%. It was 98%. There was no evidence. None. No evidence. Respiratory failure is the #1 reason for death from fentanyl. The medical examiner said, quote, if Mr. Floyd had been found dead in his home or anywhere else and there were no other contributing factors, he would conclude that it was an overdose death. Give me a break. That's reasonable doubt. My God. Chauvin didn't even have his knee on Floyd's neck. It was on his shoulder. That's why the prosecution referred to it as the neck area. And the closing argument for the prosecution was, believe your eyes. Unreasonable force, pinning him to the ground, that's what killed him. This was homicide. In other words, believe what you see and not the actual evidence. What you see is a well-weathered hat. And it did get this way by being worn on a farm in northern Queensland for many years. Now, many of you will assume that it was me that was wearing it. It wasn't. I said it was tough, but I lived through it. But it was not me wearing the hat. What was withheld in this case, or the misdirection, used to take your attention away is part of the hypnosis umbrella. And at least 50% of Americans are under this one. Google George Floyd murder. You get 124 million hits. Google George Floyd killing. You get 148 million hits. Google George Floyd overdose, 6 million. The case is pretty overwhelming that the fentanyl created respiratory failure, which caused a heart failure. But guess what? The press painted it completely different. Before there was even a trial, there's 124 million cases where they said it was murder, 148 million cases where they said it was a killing. That's what you call hypnosis. That's what you call propaganda. And it was translated into mob rule. Probably not a lot of people realize that shortly after Floyd was killed, there were riots, and they changed the charges. They increased the charges because of the riots, because people were rioting saying he should have been charged with second-degree murder. So they charged him with second-degree murder. It's just it's mob rule. And if you're okay with mob rule, I don't want to live in the same house as you. I don't want to live in the same neighborhood, the same town, the same county, the same state, or even the same country. So yes, we are divided. And no, Trump didn't do it. It's what's being done by liberals, Democrats, the media, the whole of the left. We are divided into those that seek the truth and those that seek power. And those that seek power don't care about the truth. Do your part and speak the truth. Don't let the bullshit go. It's gone too long.